everybody, my name is Eric Hopkins. This is my good buddy Brendan, and we are here tonight to do a little bit of a recap / preview of the upcoming NFL games in preseason week 1, and of course going over the Hall of Fame game that happened this last weekend. But before we get into that, if you're finding us for the very first time, please click that like and subscribe button, and don't forget to hit the notification bell so you get all the notifications about when we put up new content right here on this channel. So this is a weekly show that we're going to be doing here during the NFL season where we discuss all the happenings that's going on around the league. And we got a lot of topics to get into tonight, so let's not wait any longer here. And let's get into the Hall of Fame ceremony itself a little bit. Obviously, we talked last week about some of the, the great Hall of Famers that are going in from 2020 and 2021. I will say up front, though, I really didn't watch a whole lot of the speeches because sometimes I felt like the speeches were really long before, but apparently this year they shortened them anyway. So I guess I could have watched a little more than I did. I did catch a little bit as a Colts fan, the Edgerrin James speech where he talked about how he started his career with golden teeth and ended up with a golden jacket. So I thought that was pretty cool. And then, of course, I watched all of Peyton Manning's induction ceremony or his speech. Again, I hate – it seems like all these years that I've watched the Hall of Fame induction ceremony, you had guys going on for an hour-long speeches, and the year that Peyton Manning, to me, one of the all-time greats in this sport, and he has to do his speech in 10 minutes. You can clearly tell he was rushing to get through everything, but it was a good speech. He made a good jab at Tom Brady, talking about how, whatever he's up for, Hall of Fame, induction in about 35 years, things like that. So he was kind of playing on the fact that Brady's longevity in the league, and he was having a good time. So I thought that was good. Did you get to watch any of the, induction ceremonies?
Yeah.
No,
I did not.
Well, I didn't know if your wife Miranda, who is a diehard Pittsburgh Steelers fan, didn't know if she caught like Bill Cowher or Troy Polamalu.
No, she did catch some of the game. As we were busy that night, so she didn't get to see much of anything.
Well, to be honest, there wasn't a whole lot to talk about the game. We'll get into it a little bit, but yeah, it was the first game of the preseason, so.
I mean, it's still football.
Yeah, it was still football, and I'm glad to see it back, absolutely. But, week 1 of the preseason, well, not exactly week 1. Week 0, technically. Week 1 is this week. But we'll get into some of those games as well here in a minute. But, for the Hall of Fame game, though, the Pittsburgh Steelers defeated the Dallas Cowboys 16-3. Again, it felt like the very beginning of the game, it kind of felt like it was going Dallas's way a little bit. There was an interesting handoff that the Steelers tried to do, and the ball carrier ran into the ball, and they fumbled it, and the Cowboys recovered, and they went down, I believe, and they scored a field goal on their opening drive. But after that, it seemed like the second half, it was mostly the Steelers, I should say.
There was this weird screenshot that she showed me. I can't remember, somebody else posted it. But you couldn't tell whether it was showing who had possession of the ball because it was just a white line.
Huh.
So it looked like Dallas had a score, I shit you not, of -3 versus the Steelers 0. At the time, that's what it was.
Right.
And she goes, "How do you score -3?" And I went, "What?"
No, that don't.
She showed me, and I was like, how do you lose 3 points?
Nice camera angles. Sounds like WWE camera work, but but yeah.
But it legit it was on the lower third. So my guess, again, like I said, it was showing who had possession of the ball, but for whatever reason, it looked like it said -3, and I was like, did they take points away? Is it tip? Like, is it?
I mean. Why not? Fantasy football does. Why not do that in the real game? Let's put it in fantasy or some negative points and fractional points and things like that. Let's do all that.
And you -3 in. So now, if you go for a field goal for a 3 and you miss it, you get -3 points. Not only do you have to regain those 3 points to get back to fucking 0.
Right.
That would make football way more.
You got to run around in circles and get to the end zone before you can get back in the positive. But yeah.
You got to get back to kick that field goal and then score a touchdown afterwards in order to get back into positive.
that'd be awesome. In a way, it would also be frustrating as a fan, but especially if you follow some of the.
Fan, imagine as a player, you'd be like, "I'm done.
I'm just out. Forget this." So a couple of the notes from the game, I thought Chase Claypool looked pretty decent here a little bit with the little play time he had. He made a great grab on the sideline and got up slow after he got the wind knocked out of him, though. So I think Coach Mike Tomlin said that he was actually doing okay over the weekend, so that's a good thing. But there's a little bit of a scary situation there with one of your, high profile. I don't know if you call it the highest profile on the team, but he's definitely got some speedy maneuvers, and I think he's actually one of the better receivers personally, maybe like the third guy. But also Najee Harris made his debut as a Steeler here and in the NFL in general. He looked okay, but the first game with an entirely revamped offensive line, in my opinion. But they were giving him the ball early and often. He was even getting snaps into the second quarter for the first preseason game. That's a lot for a rookie. So I got a feeling he's going to be getting a workhorse type, workload when it comes to the, season here. So might be got to look at here when it comes to fantasy circles, not to mention just in general as a teammate. So I think he could be interesting to watch as a rookie for sure. But other than that, the game wasn't really a whole lot to write home about. But like I said, Steelers 16, Cowboys 3.
What do you expect? It's not even preseason. It was just a Hall of Fame game.
Yeah, and a lot of this stuff that we're talking about, how Najee Harris looked okay. He was playing with the whole revamped offensive line, but at the same time, not many starters were playing. Big Ben didn't play. Juju didn't play. A lot of these guys, Eric Ebron didn't play. Mm-hmm. And on the Cowboys, no Dak Prescott, which they did discuss with him during the game that he's still coming off his injury. I think he's trying to get his shoulder in the right place so he could throw some balls. So it's a little concerning, kind of like the Colts situation a little bit. The Cowboys may not have.
I don't want to talk about it.
Yeah, well, we're going to get into the Colts here in a minute, but yeah, for Dak Prescott, though, I didn't realize he has a potential to possibly miss the opener against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers on opening night. So if that's the case, it's going to take a little bit of that game away for me. Tom Brady against a backup, it's kind of like throwing the towel. I mean, I never say really, never.
Because look,
but you still got Zeke and all that.
Started off trash last season.
Yeah, it took them a while to get, but now that they've had a year in the system and all that stuff.
Yeah.
And it's the Super Bowl champs, opening night, raising their banner. A lot of people are going to take Tampa despite who plays in that game, whether Dak's ready or not. But I would just prefer to see Dak versus Tom get an actual good showing for Week 1's opener. But we'll have to wait and see how that goes with Dak himself. All right, so with the Hall of Fame recap out of the way, I did want to discuss a little bit from the Indianapolis Colts. I guess there was a little bit of news that came out this weekend that Darius Leonard, the linebacker who's been absolutely incredibly stellar, in my opinion, on this team. He's always around the ball. He makes a ton of tackles, great interceptions, things like that. He has signed a 5-year, $99.25 million extension with the Colts, including $52 million in guaranteed money as part of his lucrative deal.
Big money.
Yeah, he got paid, son. He will earn $20 million per year over the first 3 years. So, well-deserved, in my opinion.
In the words of the late, great American Dream, he pulled up to the pay window.
And he just cashed his check. But, Darius Leonard, to me, from a fantasy perspective, he is a fantasy defensive stud. Like I said, tons of tackles, always around the ball. Occasionally gets hurt. He's not the biggest linebacker in the world, but he's very smart, very intelligent, and he makes all the plays for the Colts defense, and he's a central cog in that wheel. Yes. Or in that machine, whatever you want to call it. So I'm glad that he's going to be around for the long term. I know the Colts have been working on getting some of these younger guys that they got a few years ago nailed down. I think Quentin Nelson was another one they were trying to get worked in before the season started, but with that injury to him, I don't know how that's going to be progressing or not. Yeah, so it's good to see Darius Leonard be around for a lot of years, hopefully. Because to me, this is not a good comparison because obviously he's not there yet. But to me, he kind of reminds me of the Ray Lewis of the Colts defense. He's right there in the middle of the field, linebacker and all that stuff. So I'm very happy to see that. All right, so with that being said, there was a few other news items that I thought we maybe discuss a little bit here. Nothing a whole lot really going on around the league right now. Just a lot of training camp stuff going on. I thought we would talk a little bit about, I guess, Deshaun Watson has returned to Houston practice after an absence. I know he's kind of going through some things on his own. We won't get into those things here. But I guess it's good to see him back at practice, even though I think the Houston Texans kind of maybe going to have some issues this year because they, traded away their best receiver. Last year they weren't so good without him. So I don't know. I mean, they're still in the Colts division, though, so you never know. They could still be a bit of a threat. Anytime a division game comes up with Indianapolis, it's always close, no matter who they are. But I think on the whole, I'm not so sure if Deshaun Watson's going to be enough for that team alone. But we'll see. Maybe they've made some moves that I'm unaware of. I could look at their starting lineup here, I suppose. Deshaun Watson, David Johnson, Philip Lindsay. They got Mark Ingram. I didn't realize that. Brandon Cooks, Nico Collins. I'm guessing he might have been drafted. Chris Conley at receiver. So, I mean, they've got a lot of that depends on Brandon Cooks. Last year he wasn't as stellar. I mean, he's had better days, that's for sure. I mean, I remember when he was with the Saints, I believe he had decent receiving numbers. But that was because Drew Brees was there, which is another guy who's not going to be around this year. Yeah, so that'll be interesting. Also, another bit of news coming out of training camp. Saquon Barkley, who tore his ACL, I believe it was in week 3 of last year, says he feels great after finally being removed from the PUP list, and he is back at his first practice for the Giants. So another, running back stud getting back on the field here. So I think that'll be a good thing for the Giants, obviously, no doubt about that. But and he's had a whole year basically to rehab that ACL, so he should be pretty much ready to go by week 1. Any thoughts on any of these news? No. Brad's like, you got this.
No, because my whole thing is this, because every time I'm like, okay, I'll get excited about something, and then it doesn't work out. So I'm not jinxing myself. There are people that, I want to play this year and who I expect to have a good year.
Right.
But if I say something, I'll jinx it. So I ain't saying shit.
Are we talking about any team in particular, like the Colts? Or are we just talking about in general?
Yeah, well, the Colts in general, I told you my whole thing with that. I just want a good start to a good season.
Yeah, and right now it's not looking promising.
Right now it's not, and that's because I got excited. I was like, I bought into all your bullshit of trying to be Mr. Optimistic.
I'm Mr. Positive a lot of times. I try
to believe in you, and then the moment I did, fuck it.
Yeah, that down goes Q, down goes Wiz, with the exact same injury, which apparently is a rare injury, and they both get it basically the same week. It's crazy. We just can't buy a break unless it's in your foot. But but anyway, yeah. So I'm still fairly optimistic. 5 to 6 weeks means they could potentially play in the week 1 opener, but we'll have to wait and see how the Colts handle all that. But Brandon liked that one. I cracked him. But yeah, that was right off the top of my head too. That was great. All right, with all that down, let's get into week 1 of the preseason, which starts this Thursday. What would be the date on that?
Wait, what's today? 12? No, today's the 9th.
It would be the 12th. That would be the day.
Yeah,
so
I think that.
Yeah, he got that. So I'll run down a list of the games here. Again, it's preseason, so whatever. But it's nice to have.
You say but preseason is also that that warm up that gets you okay, this is it. We're starting. This gets you know what I mean. So preseason for a lot of people is kind of this make or break. All right, let's go.
It's their opportunity to show their team that they're worthy to be kept and not cut by the time cut down day comes around.
You can have all the high prospects you want for a certain dude, but if he gets out there and shits the bed.
Yeah, absolutely. And the thing about preseason, I know as a fantasy football player, we're both in our own league, which I finally got going this week. Finally got all that squared away. First time we're doing a keeper league, so we'll be discussing that a little bit here on the show as well. But I know for me as a fantasy football player, sometimes watching preseason games is a good way to scout certain players. But the problem with that is, again, a lot of the starters don't always play, and especially now that the preseason has been truncated into 3 weeks, except for the Steelers and the Cowboys, who had to play an extra game this year due to the Hall of Fame. But it'll be interesting to see how these teams will navigate this, being only 3 weeks of the preseason. What week will we see the starters most? Will it be week 2 instead of week 3 like it usually is, or will it be week 3, the final week before they have a week off before the opener? I don't know if that's how they're going to play it or what they're going to do, or if starters will play much at all. It'll be interesting to see how all that works. But as Brett had said, though, it's a good place for some of these young guys and guys who aren't like the superstar names to make a name for themselves and get on the roster and hopefully make the final cut. We got 2 games on Thursday night this week. It's the Washington football team, which is they've still not picked a mascot, if they ever will. I think they've talked about how they may just stick to the Washington football team. They kind of like it. So we'll see if that's the case. But they take on the New England Patriots at 7:30 p.m. on the NFL Network. We also have another game at 7:30, the Pittsburgh Steelers versus the Philadelphia Eagles on Thursday night. So your wife will be interested in that one. Yep. I don't know what channel it's on, but I'm sure you can be found in other. It'll probably get on replay on the NFL Network and things like that as well. Mm-hmm. Friday night, we've got 3 games. The Tennessee Titans will face the Atlanta Falcons. The Buffalo Bills will also face the Detroit Lions. They're both at 7 o'clock. And the 10 o'clock game will be the Dallas Cowboys versus the Arizona Cardinals. On Saturday is when the majority of these games take place. We've got 10 games on Saturday. So a lot of these will obviously be on replay on NFL Network and things like that for sure. We have the Miami Dolphins versus the Chicago Bears. I wonder if Bears. I wonder how Chris Grow and some of the Bears fans around work are feeling about the Bears season. They ain't gonna, well, maybe not preseason, but just about the
no
Bears.
point in watching it. Bears trashing them.
Oh, shots fired. I hope you're watching this, Chris. I will be posting this in the fantasy football chats. So
I want Chris to know I said that.
Yeah. So hopefully we'll get some views over there. No one else seems to watch our channel. Right. We also have the Denver. Well, yeah, the Denver. That's the only 1 o'clock game. The Miami versus the Bears. 4 o'clock we have the Denver Broncos versus the Minnesota Vikings. Then we got a slew of evening games. The New Orleans Saints sans Drew Brees, which was something maybe we got to talk about a little bit. No Drew Brees moving forward, which is going to be weird. For a long time, the staples in the NFL were Peyton Manning, Tom Brady, Drew Brees, probably a few others. But, Drew Brees and Peyton Manning both gone, so it's Tom's world now. We're just living in it, unfortunately.
That's a weird statement to make.
Well, the Tom Brady part, it's always been his world. We've been living in it, it seems like. Brother. But, yeah, the fact that Brees and Manning ain't there no more, either Manning for that matter, and now Phillip Rivers is retired too. So Big Ben's kind of the last of that tree as well.
I know.
So
I was saying about Ben too. Like, I wonder how long he's going to be there.
Yeah, I thought he was going to retire a couple of years ago because I remember that one year he got severely banged up, didn't play most of the season. So I thought, okay, maybe he's winding down, but he's still kicking. Apparently, he looks in great shape. So that's good for him. But so we'll have the Saints versus the Baltimore Ravens. Definitely, probably not going to be any Lamar Jackson in that game. I wouldn't think. I know he's kind of coming under fire a little bit for some opinions he has as well. But we'll try to keep this off this show for sure. But if it comes up and it is relevant, we may have to discuss certain things like that sometimes though. Then at 7 o'clock we also have the Cleveland Browns versus the Jacksonville Jaguars. Could be interesting. I mean, again, 2 teams I'm interested to see this year. Not rooting for the Jaguars necessarily because they're a division rival, but with Trevor Lawrence coming in there, I'm interested to see how that goes. And of course, Baker Mayfield came this close to defeating the Kansas City Chiefs in the playoffs last year, and they did defeat the Steelers in the playoffs. Don't tell Miranda I said that, but they did do it, and that was the first time in a long time they've been able to do that sort of thing.
Yeah, so, we know it happened because I remember her reaction when it happened.
Did you have to sleep on the couch?
She wasn't happy.
I bet she wasn't happy, but that's not something you normally hear. The Steelers lose to the Browns.
Why would I bring
maybe
that
now?
Up? That sounds stupid.
I mean, maybe now that becomes more of a normal occurrence, but there for a long time that wasn't the thing. Then at 7:30, we also have the New York Jets versus the New York Giants. So a battle of the New Yorks there. Again, New York Jets with a new quarterback, it's Zach Wilson, who was drafted this year. Interesting enough, though, I don't have a whole lot of faith in the Jets sometimes, just because we've seen how they've run their organization over the last few years. Now, I know they're under some new leadership and stuff when it comes to the coaching staff. I think a lot of the 49ers' old staff is there now. But the Jets, they had Sam Darnold, and a couple years later, he's gone. Everybody thought he'd be the savior for the quarterback position, and that was not the case. And now we got Zach Wilson. We'll see what this kid does, but I'm not sure what all he's really got around him, so that's a little concerning. And the Giants, well, Daniel Jones is back, and hopefully with Saquon back as well. I think they'll be a little better as long as Daniel Jones has improved a bit, but he's a guy that I think needed some seasoning as well. There's a lot of young quarterbacks in the league that I'm interested to see how they are doing this year. Justin Herbert being another one. Speaking of new quarterbacks, Joe Burrow and the Cincinnati Bengals will take on the Tampa Bay Buccaneers with no Tom Brady most likely for this game as well on Friday night. The Houston Texans will also face the Green Bay Packers. Interesting to see how this Aaron Rodgers thing shakes out. Sounds like he's going to play now, I think.
Sure about that?
Well, he's been at camp, so there's that. So they must have at least come to some sort of agreement, I would say. Otherwise, he wouldn't be there, I wouldn't think. But so he's been around, and I've heard Devontae Adams wasn't happy about it beforehand, so hopefully he's a little happier now. So, yeah, that'll be another team to watch for. They've got a good triplets there with Aaron Jones in the backfield as well. Then we've got the Kansas City Chiefs versus the San Francisco 49ers at 8:30 on Friday night. Again, the 49ers, they took Trey Lance, I believe, but I don't know if they said he'd be ready for the season. I'm not sure if he had an injury or not. I could have heard that wrong, so don't quote me on it. But if he does play, that'd be great to maybe see him out there as a rookie for sure. No Mahomes in this game, I'd say. Seattle Seahawks versus the Oakland Raiders at 9 o'clock. Seattle is another team. There's talk that Russell Wilson may not be ready to go week 1, which to me would be – I don't want to see anybody get hurt. Let's put that out there. But – I don't even know what his injury is at the moment. But if he doesn't play week 1 against the Colts, yay us. But that doesn't mean Seattle still wouldn't beat us or anything, especially if we're not with or if we're without Nelson and Wentz or whatever. But it would at least maybe even the playing field a little bit if that's the case. But we'll have to see how that all turns out as well. And then of course the final game on Friday night at 10 o'clock will be the Los Angeles Chargers. Right? They are in LA, right? I keep wanting to say San Diego Chargers, but they go up against the Los Angeles Rams for the battle of the LA area. Again, I want to see Justin Herbert. I don't know if he'll play in this game, obviously. And the Rams, we were talking before we recorded, they traded for Matt Stafford, correct? I believe. Yes. Okay, so and Jared Goff is now with the Lions. A lot goes on in the offseason, and sometimes it takes me a little bit of time to get caught up to speed because when the offseason hits, a lot of times I don't pay a whole lot of attention. I need the break from the NFL. So when fantasy season starts to roll around, I start to reacclimate myself and things like that. So I'm starting to slowly get back into the swing of stuff here. And then, of course, the only game on Friday and the only game left for the week on Sunday. Did I say Friday? I meant Sunday. On Sunday at 1 o'clock, the only game of the day will be the Carolina Panthers versus the Indianapolis Colts. So they'll be the only game Sunday to check out. So that'll be good for me. I ain't got to worry about the other distractions from the other games. You can just sit down and watch the Colts, see how they look, despite all the injuries they've got going on right now. Again, most of these players like Darius Leonard, Ryan Kelly, Nelson Wentz, they're probably all not going to play. I wouldn't be surprised if we don't see Jonathan Taylor. Marlon Mack's coming off an injury. Maybe we see a little bit of him just to kind of get an idea how he is. I don't know. But though he may not play as well, and we'll see about guys like T.Y. Hilton and stuff like that. So, yeah, definitely a full slate of games coming up this week. So, finally, we can actually say that for a change. I can't wait to watch these. But
I can't either. I like I said, as much as I want to watch the Colts, to see what it's going to be like this year, and like I said, I'm hoping all is well, and Wentz is able to play. It's just like I said, it's just one of those things where it's like, man,
yeah,
I don't want to get my hopes up.
Well, and like I said before too, I mean, Mr. Positivity here, I would rather they have this issue now than say early to mid-November, so at least in this case, both guys will hopefully be good to go for the long run when it comes to Nelson and Carson Wentz. So even if they miss 3 to 4 weeks, if the Colts can somehow manage to get 2 to 3 wins out of the first month and a half, I'd be okay with it, I think. And hopefully you can maybe bring them back and go on a run toward the end of the season. But who's to say they won't play week 1, and they may just be fine, but we'll have to wait and see what happens. But a lot of these games, I mean, it'll be fun to watch if nothing else. We can't always get a very good idea of how the regular season is going to go from preseason. That's the weirdest thing. A lot of times I'll watch preseason games and I'll be like, all right, that guy looks good. I want to draft him in fantasy football. That guy looks good. I remember one year I saw Arian Foster absolutely destroy the Dallas Cowboys week 3 of the preseason, and I thought to myself, that guy's going to be a stud, and I ended up drafting him and just dominated my fantasy league that year. So you can find diamonds in the rough in the preseason, but sometimes it's hard to tell if that's how the team's going to go when the games actually matter, because so many players don't play. And coaches don't show their hand and things like that. So it's a weird thing to watch, but at the same time, it's good to just see football back with a full slate of games this week for the next. I guess a full slate of games basically every week and through February, except for I think there is a week off between preseason and the regular season, if I'm not mistaken. So there'll be a little bit of a break there, so all the teams can get. But even so, there'll only be like maybe. It might only be like a week and a half because the kickoff game is on Thursday, so it may not be a big break, but it'll be good to see for sure. You said something about maybe having a couple other thoughts, but you didn't know if you wanted to share because
yeah, man, because it was like, okay, so for me, like every year I do this shit, and like I get so mad at myself because I always end up either in the middle or the lower part when we draft. You know what I'm saying?
Talking
And
fantasy,
so
yeah.
a lot of the guys who I'm like, okay, boom, I know where I'm going to start because I know who I'm looking at.
Right.
And I know who's going to be gone if I don't get in the top, let's say top 5. Mm-hmm. So I'm like, okay, so I know where I'm going to be at. But I do know how some people in our league draft. So I know, okay, I know where he's going to go. Cool. So then I'll be able to pick my spots sometime.
Right.
This year, I ain't saying shit because every time I have expressed myself over like, okay, I'm looking at this, and this. I remember the one year I did it, and like, Chapman helped me out, and we were going over a lot of stuff, right? And that was the year that Miranda picked in front of me and Nate picked right behind me.
Okay.
And
don't you hate that though? Yeah, like people get stolen from you every time.
My bad. It was Nate, then Miranda, then me. And I would sit there and I'm like, okay, with my little paper. And then Nate would pick one. And then Miranda would pick one, and you hear Nate go, shit. And then I'm like, what the
fuck? That's the one thing I hate about drafts, man. They always somebody who's going to I don't know, I can't remember the appropriate term, Skype you or something like that, whatever. They snipe you. Thank you.
It's unintentional. You know what I'm saying? It's
no one knows.
But it's like I had, like I had a game plan. And then that game plan went to shit real quick. And I'm like, man, so now I'm picking people like so far down that I wouldn't have picked so early because I have no choice.
Well, but here's the thing, though, too. Just for what I do in that situation, and it's if it comes to that point and the guys I wanted just got nabbed, I take best available. I don't jump a couple rounds ahead just because it's a guy I do want to get. Because to me, that's how I sabotage my team if I do that. Because then you're picking guys you could possibly get a round later. I know you may miss out on them too, but to me, it's like, all right, I'm more about production than I am about, hey, I like this guy. So if they'll still score for me, I don't care what your name is. I'll pick Tom Brady if it helps me win a Super Bowl in our league for sure. That championship belt's got to come home to Daddy. You know what I'm saying? So,
righty.
Yeah, I made it weird. But anyway, so. But yeah, so we'll probably do a lot of talking about our fantasy league, probably toward the end of some of our shows, kind of like what we're doing now, just so we don't, bore some people who don't want to listen to our fantasy football talk. But we will be doing a draft September 5th for our league. So we may even discuss the draft a little bit and some of the moves and stuff. Because like I said, I will be posting this video in our fantasy football league as well for all of our players. And I might even make the league public and maybe share the link so people can actually just take a look at it if they want to. But we'll discuss that and see if that goes well. But yeah, so we'll be maybe doing some draft recaps and stuff that we're doing and how our leagues do. We won't make a big segment out of it on the show each week for sure, and we'll discuss all the NFL news before we get into all that. So if you want to stick around at the end of the show and watch us talk about our fantasy stuff, we'll do that then. But so I'm
crying,
cry and watch us complain and moan and
talk
all that
shit
stuff
about people who picked before me.
Yeah. And hopefully sometime this year, I'd like to get some of the other fantasy football players on to kind of discuss the NFL.
Chris,
that would be nice.
Yeah, I told Chris, I said, we'll set you up with Skype or whatever and have you come on the show and we'll talk about some of the football picks this year.
Yeah.
And stuff. And he's down for it. The only person I don't want to have on here is Matt.
Well, the defending fantasy football champion in our league may have to make if he that could be interesting for sure. But yeah, we may have some special guest appearances throughout the year as well. We won't just talk fantasy, but we'll talk about the league and then we'll talk about fantasy or something. But yeah, so that could be a lot of fun.
He was talking so much trash silently today. I don't want to beat him up.
Yeah, I don't blame you.
I've never wanted to give anybody a swirly in my life.
It's all love. Well, except for Matt. It may not be all love for Matt, but we have a good time for sure.
I was like, I'm about to get this man a swirly. Keep talking, man.
But for those of you wondering, our league is going to be a 10-man or 10-team fab keeper league starting this year. So we did Fab last year, and I think most of us actually enjoyed doing it that way.
Yeah, it was a lot of fun.
It was a lot of fun. That way everybody has a chance to grab a free agent and stuff like that. And now that it's a keeper league, which will be interesting to see, because not this year, but the following year, when let's say a keeper gets dropped or whatever, something like that. It'll be interesting to see how many people bid and how high they bid on some of these players, just to kind of.
I don't know, man. Like, I know how we do. Like, a lot of our players, like, a lot of people, it's gonna be ridiculous.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Our league has been around.
A lot of our dudes will try to outbid somebody just for the sake of doing it, just to raise it so somebody else will get stuck with it.
Well, the thing is, you don't know how much the other person's bidding, so it's kind of hard to do that.
Oh, jeez.
Well, that's the way it was last year. But the thing is, too, I put in the rule book that I'm going to pass out at some point here too. You can pick up people off the waiver wire for free, but people don't know if someone else is going to bid. So you got to take that gamble. Now, if it's later in the week and say the waiver wires have already cleared, you can pick up a guy on Friday or Saturday. Don't have to put a single dime down because no one else is going to grab them. You can pick them up immediately. So there are ways to play the system a little bit. So we'll get into all that once the season starts here. But yeah, I'm excited about it. First time doing a keeper league. That way we'll be playing for the long term here, not just a year in and year out. So that'll be a lot of fun, and hopefully that'll lead to some continuity between friends, and it might lead to some discussions and maybe disagreements as well. We've had some.
I can't wait.
Well, the group we have now has been pretty good. We've had some issues in the past where people have gotten mad at each other. I mean, because we do play for money and things like that. So when you do that,
anytime we bring money in it,
yeah, it's just nature of being competitive in general.
Yeah,
but
everybody's competitive.
Yeah, exactly.
Play with, so it's just one of those things. But it's still fun.
But we've had some of those players who in the past. Now those players have come and gone. The core players that we have, the 10 that we've settled on here, are basically the same players we've had for years now. I think everybody in the league has been in the league more than 1 year. Mm-hmm. So we know who we're dealing with. We've kind of grown as a league. So I think we got a good group that's not going to do that sort of thing. But we've definitely taken precautions in case things like that do happen.
But it's gonna be some shit.
It's going to be fun. It's going to be wild. It's going to be crazy, and hopefully we'll have a good time doing it. But that'll do it for this week's edition of the NFL recap show / preview show. I guess we'll be doing every week here. We'll recap the games that just happened, plus preview the following week, and maybe just the big games coming up or something like that. But we'll definitely have all the news and stuff going on for you here on the channel as well. But the real question here is, guys, what do you guys think about the NFL season coming up? What do you guys think about the Hall of Fame weekend? Are you guys looking forward to the week 1 of the preseason? And of course, what do you think of the NFL season, regular season coming up here in general? Who is your pick to win Super Bowl 56 as of right now? Comment down below. Let us know. And don't forget to hit that like and subscribe button. And please hit that notification bell so you also get all the notifications about when we put up new content right here on this channel. And until our next video, guys, take care. Take care.
Legit brother.
Play on.
Yeah. Ready to go, man. Lock and load. That's right. I swear to God that I can drop and roll. Yeah. I got a shot and I sound